Clog TV.
Beyond the policy.
Hello and welcome to the special edition of the KOKO Digest Morning Show. We are having an exclusive interview with one of the distinguished sons of our mother Ghana. Before I give you his name, I'm going to read a little bit of his profile so that you get to know the good things he has done for our nation. So let me start with the fact that he was the head of Gimpa Public School and later the designated dean from December 2004 to September 2008. He retired for the third time in 2017 from Ghana's public services. That means that this man retired, then Ghana's public service will come and pull him again, and he'll retire and he'll pull him again. That should show you how important and how impactful his work has been in our service today. He was also privileged to work in the public service as a lecturer, a consultant, and an ambassador. He served as the secretary to the cabinet of the Republic of Ghana from 2012 to 2017. At Gimpa, this ambassador designed some of the core principal courses that were perceived to be the fundamental courses for public administration practitioners. Now, some of these courses include research methods in public administration, human relations in management, public policy making, and policy analysis in public policy making. Now, these courses were designed to equip participants with knowledge and skills that would facilitate their work. As a consultant, he was a member of the Public Administration Restructuring and Decentralization Implementation Committee, known as PADIC. Now, I'm sure a lot of us don't even know what PADIC is, but I'm sure tomorrow you will learn about PADIC and all that it has been in the service now. This PADIC also introduced the 4-line directorates in the ministerial organizations to give them policy planning, monitoring, and evaluation. PADIC also generated the framework for what has become the National Development Planning Commission, known as NDPC. He was an ardent believer in the original mandate for Gimpa, which was to develop personnel for the public services, where development of personnel meant tracking of the performance of those produced and topping up their knowledge and skills, as well as their attitude, to enable them perform at the levels where original entrants were expected to rise to, so that no time should such groomed public servants perform at levels of incompetence. It is also his belief that this particular mandate of Gimpa as the Staff College of the Government of Ghana should not be discontinued to ensure a value for money public administration. Now let us get familiar with Ambassador Benjamin Clement Egan. Hello, sir.
Hello, Yara.
It is such an honor to be here with you today. I hope you're doing well.
Very well, by God's grace.
And thank you
It's
much.
my pleasure as well.
Yes, thank you so much for granting us this opportunity to interact with you today.
Thank you very much.
So, we are here in honor of the 7th Nathan Kwao Excellence Lectures and Awards ceremony, which will be held very soon. And we know that you're probably one of the people that met him and interacted with him. So we would like to, just interact with you a little about him and, of course, leading into some discussions about the civil service today. So my first question would be, how do you know the late Nathan Anan Kwao?
Yes, this drawing of the civil service, as many have attested, I watched the clip which you recorded 2 years ago, and every word that was spoken about him, including the high compliments paid by our former head of state, the late Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings, was very accurate. I know of him that he was one person who the PNDC brought into the office of the PNDC, who stabilized the otherwise perceived tumultuous nature of then the PNDC.
Yeah.
And He's, I think, both Mr. Professor Kwamna Hoy and Mr. Atudazi were very correct in saying that as a trained public servant, he usually waited to be invited to give his views. And then he did so fearlessly and accurately, so that he's, to the best of my knowledge, credited with bringing in people like Justice D.F. of blessed memory, who also contributed largely to the forward march of our democracy. And so, to all intents and purposes, as a statesman, not just a public servant, he did contribute a lot. And then I am not surprised that he's known to have made a statement in one of his several lectures that it is the perfection of the civil service that will move Ghana's development and not politicians.
So
now,
you've taken my question right out of my mouth. I was going to ask you if you can share your views on a quote, such a beautiful quote.
Yes, because it's actually, in my view, clearly summarizes what it is to run a state. You must necessarily have politicians. Equally, you must necessarily have public servants who know their left from their right. And the public servants and civil servants that I'm referring to, if I can quote one of them that I came to know very well in his late years, Mr. Mike Bentel. I once had to ask him, okay, Mike, why do you people, did you learn also to shake hands so perfectly? Then he said, we are confident people. Now, the confidence, what confidence are you talking about? That they were trained for the jobs that they were doing, and therefore they knew exactly what to do. Come to think of you asking me to expand on that statement of the late Nathan Kwao, I would say that what he's saying is that, the politicians and the top civil servants have to have symbiotic relationship. Symbiotic or symbiosis is about equal partnership in any endeavor. It is a situation where you cannot do without the other. You must necessarily work together, otherwise you will not have the results expected of you. And so, and I'm glad that the 7th lecture is going to dwell on the subject of the Weberian
ideals
of political neutrality.
You seem to be taking my questions away from
I'm sorry, we had three, and you were warned that as a former lecturer, I could speak on and on and on. And so please forgive me if I'm taking your questions and answering them ahead of them being raised. But that, you see, this Weberian ideals in a way refers also to what he was saying. The Weberian ideal is built on training of people for specific jobs. That a person has to be qualified to tackle a job. You just don't take anybody from anywhere and put him on a job. And I suppose that tomorrow we will hear it being stressed that when people have been trained in the civil public services correctly, it will be very possible for one person to unfortunately be away for some period, and you bring another person and he carries on with the work because they know what it is that they are supposed to do. And to cap it, when the eminent Mr. Kwao said this, he had also at the back of his mind a reference where the old civil service, nobody was allowed to work in positions unless on arrival in the particular organization, he had read up the files, the most pertinent files, to know what has been going on before the person starts working. You know, so I don't know whether you know the expression reading the files. Reading the files simply is that be familiar with what is expected of this particular organization before you start contributing to it.
So, as a former trainer, you lectured in Gimpa, you're also the dean there. Would you say that there has been a decline in how the training used to go on in your time versus now?
Well, I wished to have a little time for me to go and visit my friends back at Gimpa to know exactly what they're doing. But in our time, we made sure that there was a complete balance as to who taught what subjects at Gimpa to the public servants. You know, there was the theoretical side, which could be taught by any well-read academic. But then on the practical side, we insisted that it had to be a well-acclaimed, well-acknowledged public servant who teaches, who taught those subjects. You know, and simply because you cannot claim to know about something that you don't know about. If you have not worked in the civil service before, you cannot really be called upon to teach the civil servant. So I remember that all those who passed through my hands used to say how relevant some of the things we're teaching were. You know, sometimes also they said, this is very good, but we cannot practice them because we are not likely to have the opportunity to practice them. You know, I always said I was sharing knowledge, not teaching. So they would then tell me why they thought so. You know, I had worked in the public services before I joined Gimpa, and most of Gimpa's eminent leaders, Dr. James Nti, Mr. Ike Ujang, Dr. No, a few of the names I've received. They all came out of the civil service. Some were previous secretaries to cabinet or deputy secretaries to cabinet. You know, so that they were talking about real situations that they needed to improve. You know, and so as we go on with the discussion, I would like to come back to that quote and also this theme of the Weberian exercise, and to challenge Closak that you need to do something about it. So you just go on.
The challenge was taken. So yes, my follow-up question was going to be that, you know, based on how we've worked in the public services and even in Gimpa training public or civil servants, even local government service personnel, what are some of the suggestions you would make to today's local and even civil service organizations now?
Well, and that is exactly where I was going in a way. That I would want to remind us that the training of civil servants is not just an act of giving them education about the public service, but it's actually giving them skills and, more importantly, the attitudes that they must have when they serve the public. You know, and by this I am referring to the situation where in the past, you even signed letters as yours.
Yours faithfully, or
no, not yours faithfully. Your servant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, you use the word your servant.
Your servant. Okay.
You know, so that the civil servant knows that he's a servant of the public.
Yeah.
You know, and that not the way that some have been known to treat the public, as if they are bother, and that they should not come there at all. No, and it was the reason also why when Paddock worked, and when you talk about the 4-line divisions,
Yes.
the idea was that since the ministry is primus inter pares of all public services, and the civil service law endorsed it further by saying that wherever there is a ministry in the sector, it becomes the highest body. Then it went on to say, amongst the job description of a chief director, that he is the principal advisor to the minister, and the chief director is the one who, from working closely with the minister, leads the public services, the civil service, and the private sector in setting and achieving objectives of the sector. So you see that the ministry has a principal position which should not be toyed with. When you toy with it, you do so to your own peril.
Yeah, so I want to ask about, in the earlier conversations, it was mentioned that now we have maybe the ministers or even top officials in the ministries bringing their own personnel into the service or into the ministry to come and also perform the same tasks that there are civil servants to also perform. So with that, how do we manage something like that or mitigate such an issue?
I must say it because, after all, I've been in the system, and it behooves of me to share my experiences. If those who bring outsiders in as special assistants, special aids,
yes,
were to actually measure the contribution of such aids to what the civil service could do, they'll have to come up with a clear understanding that those special aids don't match trained, skilled public servants with the right attitude. That's why I began by saying that, in setting the agenda for the sector, the civil servant works with the minister to determine the minister's general understanding and his aspirations for the sector. Then the chief director will lead the leadership, director generals, managing director, what have you, as well as the leadership of the private sector in formulating what will work for the entire sector. And after they reach a certain point, they will refer the matter to the minister for his endorsement.
Yes.
Because the minister is the political decision maker. And once the minister endorses it, then they collectively will work out the strategic implementation plans with evaluation as the hallmark to it, so that you don't spend money without knowing what the value of the money spent.
So in your earlier submissions, you mentioned that the civil servant has to be trained, or the public servant has to be trained for what they do. But in recent times, we realize that this question is not to maybe place any kind of judgment or opinion on our president's appointments. But we realize that some of the ministers that are appointed were not trained in their field. We could have a doctor becoming the minister for maybe something that is totally opposite his or her field. Or we could have an engineer being the minister for something that is nowhere near, whatever ministry they've been put. So with that, how then do we implement the civil servant or this public servant being trained to do what they need to do in that ministry?
Let me start with a rather lighter part to the very serious question you have asked. I had also the privilege to lead a team for the reorganization of the Ministry of Health, which eventually gave birth to the health service.
Yeah.
Because the Ministry of Health used to be one of those ministries that were styled as it was called unified. I will get the correct word, but it didn't have departments.
Okay.
Now when we did this work, whilst we're doing this work, I heard comments from the professionals that they really prefer not to have doctors as ministers.
Okay.
Because then the doctors, because they think they know the field, try to impose their own personal experiences on them. They would rather have a generalist who understands health systems to lead them.
Okay.
So to the question whether doctors are appointed, people are appointed there who are not doctors, and doctors go to some other at leadership level. That's why I'm saying that the main work, as late Mr. Nathan Kwan said, is the perfection of the civil service that moves the development of a nation, not the politician.
Okay.
The politician is there to give political advice. After all, they went for the mandate. You, the civil servant, you didn't go for a mandate. So they are the ones who the people of Ghana have entrusted with the destiny of Ghana. And our constitution refers to the aspirations of the people.
Yeah.
They are there to express the aspirations of the people. Then the civil servant, they will work with the aspirations of the people and give the options for the politician to then again decide what to tackle.
Okay.
In this process, the minister is not the person to decide ab initio.
Okay.
But you also have to be aware, as I did, and I worked with it, and I taught. I used to share in the lecture room that all ministers have survival instincts beyond what you can imagine.
Okay.
Their principal objective is to survive in their positions. So if you are going to be telling them all the time, you can't do this, you can't do that, without offering options close to what they wanted to do, you're not going anywhere with them.
Yeah. So would you say that it does not necessarily matter that maybe a medical doctor has been made minister for maybe roads and transport or something, that rather we should, or the service should put them under some form of training, like you said already in the document. So they should be put under some form of training to get conversant with that, because it seems sometimes as though, based on the complaints we see from the citizens, that sometimes our leaders are a little detached from the issue. And like you worked you worked with the health system. So if maybe today's nurses and doctors are complaining, you may sort of understand, as opposed to somebody who is very new to the field. So with that, would you suggest that they put them under training for a while?
You have actually asked a very important question, which brings me back to why we should retain GIMPA's staff position. Now, the quality of personnel at GIMPA, with the assistance of, I think, one Canadian institution, also had a mandate to bring in ministers. For, I think, used to be a whole week. Of training. I don't want to use the word training, but the idea was training. To bring them up to speed about what the public service is, and what their roles are going to be, how to work with the public servants, and how to work jointly in cabinet, how to serve the president, So the ministers did not walk in without exposure as to what their responsibilities are going to be. GIMPA used to organize this. Later on, when we had the 92 Constitution, even MPs used to come over for the word. It's not training. The word was something else.
Should we use orientation?
Orientation.
Okay.
It was orientation. It was orientation. All right. Not because GIMPA was doing so well. They added the parliamentarians as well.
Okay.
So the parliamentarians will know their role, how to work with the public service and all that. Now, I don't hear that is going on.
Yes, that
You know,
is why I was
so that's
asking.
why I was saying that if you can make the observation that the politicians have very, very perfect tools. In earlier years, we refer to as the machinery of government. But public administration, in its advancement, realized that gave a mechanistic view of what the public service is. So, public administration system, the word system implies a number of parts working in interrelated manner to produce a result that no individual part could produce.
Produce alone, yes.
Produce alone. Okay. So the public administration system, meant that you needed to know what the other parts are and how they should work together. And so if now you don't give them orientation, and everybody just moves in according to what they know or what you think they know, then we're asking for problem.
Yeah, that's true. So again, on the training and things, would you say transfers could be detrimental to the development of
sure.
Because in these times that we are in, every time there's a change of government, there's a form of reshuffle where some civil servants may be transferred to a whole different ministry, or some key roles have been changed, and it is alleged that the new people brought in are party faithfuls and things like that. So would something like that undermine the integrity of the civil service?
It surely does.
Okay.
The Weberian system, again, and the old civil service, where we had they called it they called it a name, rules that needed to be respected.
Okay.
Also indicated that transfers can be very positive for exposing the civil servants to experiences that they would otherwise not get in one place. So it was expected that for a civil servant who has promised to reach certain heights, he needed to work in maybe one or two different districts.
Yeah.
Then you come and work in one or two different ministries. Before eventually he will specialize in one of the 4 line directories. You become a policy person. And the policy is policy planning, program budgeting, monitoring, and evaluation.
Yes.
So it is a policy capacity, and it's a continuum.
Okay.
Policy making is a continuum. You start from recognizing what the problem is, to define the problem, and all the way to outlining a policy that you can deal with the problem. Then you have to go and monitor and evaluate, so they don't keep spending money on a problem that has been dealt with.
Yeah.
Now, you asked the question rightly that if whether the training, the absence of training would make them less capable of doing the work of the transfers.
Yes.
Now, there are also positive transfers, and there are negative transfers.
Yes.
I will give you an example. When I was at the Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology, I discovered that there were certain provisions that the UN offered states. That if you had the right personnel and made the right institutional arrangements, you could tap into major resources.
Okay.
And fortunately, I had one civil servant, for benefit of himself and others, I won't name him. He was a qualified lawyer. He had worked in foreign affairs before. And so working with the international agencies was going to be quite
easy for him,
easy for him, relatively easier than others who have not had that experience. So we had him trained. He went to South Africa, he went to Geneva, he went to Ottawa. He trained, and it was about chemical weapons.
Okay.
Now, lo and behold, when the man returns and I'm now going to assign him to be able to bring in resources from the UN system, he was transferred to Asakragwa.
Oh.
And I went and saw my boss and said, look, what is this? This man is going away with all that knowledge and I won't have anybody. I've told these people we're going to tap resources from them. He said, oh, he's a civil servant, he must move around. So you can see the negative sides, and you said some of the transfers also are political.
Yes.
Political in nature, and it's true. And all that, when you have a very strong head of civil service, he can put a stop to those kind of things.
Yeah.
You have a strong, I make the point, strong head of civil service who knows that he's an integral part of the leadership of the country. He can explain to the politician why some of the transfers may be detrimental. You know, and in some ways, you see, it served the purpose when the secretary to cabinet used to be also the head of civil service.
Okay.
You know, because then he is sitting in cabinet, he's hearing everything that's going on. So he has, and then when he gives instructions as to how the civil service should perform to the expectation of the politicians, you know, it worked. But in our current setting, the head of civil service is not part of the cabinet setting.
So I'm sure you'll be indirectly suggesting that our system or our government looks at that for us in order to help make things better. It should be a suggestion. It's a good idea, isn't it?
No, I from my experience, that's why I said that there was a time when I was given the opportunity. You know, and that was the beauty of the Rawlings era. President Rawlings, when he appoints you, he will tell you that you have freedom to develop the field he has given you. But you must note that he is watching. He will come down like a sledgehammer if you start fooling around. You know, this tradition has continued also with the NDC tradition.
Yes.
You know, allowed to make as much contribution as you can. Now, it was the case that when I was secretary to cabinet, I saw the opportunity to move beyond the work we had done with the Public Administration Restructuring Decentralized Implementation Committee. We had learned in that exercise that if you don't specify the results you expect from reform, you don't get the best from it. So we started something we called the New Approach to Public Sector Reform, which was really endorsed by the former president, Atamus. And if you are old enough to remember, he sat in a bus. He called himself the bus driver, got all his ministers into the bus to the Kofi Annan Peace Development Center, where they had the facilities, and kept them because he didn't want them to come with their cars and drivers and so that they will be distracted. He wanted their full attention. And the idea was that make sure that whilst you do all the work that you can, make sure that you will deliver to me two most important things that people of Ghana need: food and jobs. So each minister had to come up with WHO, whatever you can attend, but give me something that will be directly helpful to the people of Ghana.
That was a good initiative.
And I can tell you that the one ministry that was in the forefront, and it was to be expected, the armed forces, they have all disciplines. So they came up with some of the best ideas and moved beyond, set up what they call the Defense Industry Holding Company to prosecute this thing because it required a lot of interaction with the private sector, the private finance, and all that. So you can see that when you have that kind of openness for public servants I mean, the minister is also a public servant in a way, to work with their people. They can produce a lot of results well beyond your imagination.
So you're still watching the special edition of the KOKO Digest Morning Show in a very exclusive interview with Ambassador Benjamin Clements Egan. We will be right back.
Welcome back to the special edition of the KOKO Digest Morning Show with our exclusive interview with Ambassador Benjamin Clements Egan. So let's get right back into the conversation. Ambassador Egan, what would you say should be the next, or should be some of the changes made to our current system now, and even the governance system down to the civil service system?
Okay. As I said at one point of the discussion, I said that we are truly well equipped with the civil service law, which makes the provision for a clear structure of our public administration system. And I did mention that it says that whenever there is a ministry for a sector, it is the highest body.
Yes.
That's where the minister resides, and therefore it also gave the provision that the chief director becomes the chief advisor, which means the chief director has to process all advice, and make them available to the minister, so that the minister is not budgeted with all kinds of expertise from different, because the chief director has access to these services. He has his own specialist directors, and indeed, PADIC meant for directors to be equivalent to managing directors. So the chief director will be in a special position vis-a-vis the other public services. It made that attempt. Unfortunately, it wasn't pursued, and you will have to find ways of at least exemplifying it. And therefore, I like to bring in one experience that I had at the castle with the late Professor Mills. It became obvious that he was concerned that whatever we are doing, which was not bringing a huge difference between what happened previously and what we were doing, and we suggested to him that if you really look carefully, what brings about change every 8 years had to do with two basic problems. One is food and jobs. So we counsel that he should get his ministers into a forum where they can concentrate on doing all their work, but in addition to whatever work they did, would also contribute to food availability and jobs. And here I would want to mention that the leader in that exercise happened to be the Ghana Armed Forces. Not unexpectedly. The Armed Forces has all disciplines in there, medical doctors, as engineers, as accountants, it has planners. So it could be expected that they came out with a program. I can't get into the details. I mean, at a later time when it is needed, I'll spell it out. But then the most important thing, knowing that they are going to need a certain capability to deal with the implementation, they set up the Defense Industry Holding Company,
Yeah.
which we call DIHOC.
Yeah. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, and this DIHOC, then will deal with all the related agencies and professions to make sure that they executed it without affecting the regular work of the military. Now, in implementing that, plus many others that had come up, I realized that I needed to have the direct involvement of the head of civil service and direct access to the chief directors.
Okay.
As I mentioned earlier on somewhere, in my last year at GIMPA, I had the privilege of being part of the GIMPA team that reoriented. We call it retooling.
Okay.
Retooling of the leadership of the civil and public services.
Okay.
568 of the top echelon of the civil and public service came for the program.
Okay.
So I knew them. So I said, well, we'll bring them into the main center of government decision making in the cabinet situation.
Okay.
So at the end of all those decisions, including the new approach to public sector reform, we invited the head of civil service, the chief directors, and then the chief, chief of staff.
Okay.
Most of the times began the meeting and I continued. So that we were not having too much distance between what was required of the politicians and what the public servants should do.
Okay.
Indeed, at one stage, our beloved and late president asked me, Ben, this thing is not going fast enough. What should I do? And I said, please give me some time. I'm working with the chief directors. Because he wanted to start dealing with the ministers who were flagging.
Okay.
Not all of them were taking the matter as seriously as they needed to. So to answer that question, it's a matter now of revisiting and using the capacities of the civil service, which is already available. It's a matter of knowing how to use it. It's a matter of knowing how to use it.
Okay.
But we have all the legal framework for it.
Okay. So would you suggest that today's head of civil service should also double as the secretary to cabinet?
No.
Okay.
No. Because managing the head of civil service, managing the local government service is a huge enterprise now. At the time when some of the doyens, I mentioned several secretaries, I can go on, Dr. Deborah, ESI, all those people were, I think Mr. ESI was the last to have the dual role, and it was separated between him and Mr. G.K. Saki, another giant of the civil service. So they got very competent persons who could work together also to go forward. So I am saying that rather than change structure, it's a matter of inviting the head of service to be part of the cabinet process. And from there, when the secretary to cabinet issues cabinet decisions, he should understand
liaise with him,
and he should know how to support the chief directors to also support their agencies to implement the decision.
So, in revisiting maybe a system of what we would call the old, what would you say to people who would oppose this suggestion by saying that the old is gone, let's look for something new? Because people tend to try to discard, what's old because there were a few problems with it, even though such problems could have been, mitigated or there could have been solutions. Rather, they want to implement new things, especially now with the world progressing, the Western world and everything, copying all kinds of other systems. What would you say to somebody like that?
Let me explain that. the wise person always builds on what is known. You go from the known to the unknown.
That's true.
Even if you're going to discard what is known, you must know what it is before you discard it.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'll be chasing our shadows. I don't know whether you say it's exclusive and it's to my civil servants.
Yeah.
So I would like to let you know that it's a mere it's a mere fraction. It's only about a quarter of the decisions of the cabinet decisions.
Okay.
Writing cabinet decisions is a very, very important thing.
Okay.
There's a lot of discussion, then you come to a decision, and the decision must be precise. And it must give instructions. And the instructions must be followed by monitoring and inspection, so that you get the results. And then you weigh whether the money spent has been worthwhile.
Yeah.
Because if you take the decision and you want to not follow up, what is the point? Unfortunately, quite a few of the decisions are not really followed up, and so we don't get the benefit of them. So it's not so much changing the system as doing what is already required. And the Weberian system, as you are talking about, is got that implied. And what the quotation that we dwelt on to go into this discussion of what the illustrious Nathan Kwab said.
Yes.
It's the perfection of the civil service that will bring about development, not politicians. That's the naked truth.
Yes.
In my days again, watch out, because I'm going back to my days as a lecturer in public administration. I would say that the civil service, its main function is to keep the records of the resources of the state.
Okay.
And to make them available when
needed.
When needed.
Yeah.
Particularly when new governments come up. They are the custodians of the records of the resources of the state. So for a government to come out which will not let the civil service or invite the civil service to tell you what records exist, what is the use? And that's why I was saying earlier that also for the civil servants, if you have not read the records of your particular office, you should not be allowed to start work.
Yeah.
So discarding to me will be unfortunately a painful loss. Because very often that's where our problems come from.
So could you also speak to Nathan Kwab's principles that he also left behind? I'm sure you also agree with most of them.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I said from the beginning that all the people who spoke about him in the clip that you did 2 years ago spoke the absolute truth. And what that Flag Director General Rawlings said about the man, it's up to the point.
Yes.
So there's really not too much to be said about him as to people to apply themselves in carrying forward the legacy. What did he say? What did he do? How can new people be brought to do what he advised? He's advising you. If you don't perfect your civil service, you are not going to have much of development. Or you will have confused development. Things going up and down. Today the main topic of the country is the Galamsey matter and the polluted water. If you don't mind, our old people, whether it was God inspired or whatever, used to have all kinds of ways of discouraging citizens from doing things that would bring about harm to the general population. But I tell you that there are gods and spirits inhabiting this forest. If you go to them, you have to walk backwards. You must do this. You must do that. This stream has gods. Don't do this. So all of it from native wisdom telling you that things not to do.
Okay. So you probably have advised the civil service, but I want you to just give us an official message from you, to the citizenry all the way up to the leadership on Galamsey? I mean, today there was a protest going on, mainly focused on that. So if you can give us.
Yeah, I mean, what I said in the topical matter occupying most Ghanaians is this.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, without trying to understand why our ancestors forbid our forefathers from undertaking certain actions and activities, it is precisely what we are suffering now. We didn't need a lot of scientific knowledge, but somehow they knew it, that if you go and disturb the forest, they put it this way, that some evil spirits and things will trouble you. Maybe the evil spirits are now troubling us, and then producing us coffee coffee rivers, because we have done what we shouldn't do. And so I side with those who say that enough is enough. At this moment, I saw from a clip the other day somebody speaking so passionately that at this stage you may have the money, but you won't find the food to buy.
Yes.
You may have the money, but your body is already wrecked. You don't have the lungs that doctors can work on. You may have the money, you have children who are deformed. So in many respects, there's not much wisdom in going for money which will in the long run harm you. So I know that it's tough on government, but there's nothing in this world that cannot be done if it must be done. It's a matter of focusing on it. It's going to be very difficult for government. Very, very difficult. Because somehow, whether negligently or whatever, we didn't anticipate such severe results.
Yeah, that's true.
The results are now very severe. And then we had warnings, Professor Boating, what's his first name? Frimpong Boating.
Yeah.
So drew the alarm bells, So I should be careful. One of the parts of your theme is that civil servants must not be it must not be partisan. They must be neutral. I'm trying to be as neutral as possible, but in my days as a policy lecturer, we insisted that a proper definition of public policy making is that it's a very complex dynamic process which uses many parts, and that at the end of it, it must need to satisfaction of using the best optimal resources to achieve the best interest, to achieve public interest. That is number one.
Yeah.
If you have a public policy that is not achieving public interest, then you have no business doing the policy. And part of that thought that you may not be able to bring out a public policy that satisfies everybody. But where some people are going to gain ahead of others, you should take time to explain how those others who are sacrificing today are going to benefit from the step taken. If you don't have that, don't do the public policy.
I'm sure you've already advised us throughout this interview, but I would like to take a formal admonition or advice to the civil service and even to the government as well, based on all your experience you've had as a civil servant and even a public servant.
I will not advise, but I'll challenge.
Okay.
COSAC. You've been doing so much good work. as a professional group, making sure that your members are generally well treated, and they also in return perform well. We have quoted what the illustrious Nathan Kwab said about it is the perfection of the civil service that will lead to development, not the politicians. So now the onus is on you. You know this. Then you are trying to start by investigating from the Weberian ideal.
Yes, on neutrality.
On neutrality.
Yes.
Now I would say that many of my friends, I don't even know whether to call them friends, but when we were doing the paddock work, me and my mentor, George Saki, were not loved by the senior civil servants because it meant addressing a lot of their privileges, which were somewhat on the blind side of the politicians, and so they got away with a lot. And so when we brought them and said, we said all letters must be opened in the office of the minister, and then the minister will be the first person to instruct on what to do. That was a function that was reserved to the permanent secretaries of those days before we changed to chief director. So I will not say that I want to. All these things are known, but what I want to stress is that you started well, quoting this, the two, and then doing a whole lecture on the Weberian practice. I said I will not go full out on the neutrality because the neutrality is a different subject. I saw myself as chief director. If you are the chief advisor to the minister, you have to be politically astute, and you are not going to be neutral. I said all ministers have their own survival needs. You cannot ignore that. So it is the reason why we thought that chief directors have to be people who are politically savvy. It's a political position. You are advising the minister, chief advisor to the minister. If you are going to be opposed to the chief director, to the minister all the time, you can't sit there. You have to have that kind of symbiotic relationship with him, and the minister has to believe that you want his good, you want his success. So how are you going to be neutral in doing that? Not that you will be biased, politically, party politically biased in advising him, but policy analysis requires that everything that you have in this world have people who like it and some people who do not like it. Indeed, when I was training for that job, one German professor, Schaff, told me that, look, you will never make a policy that will be 100% accepted by everybody. And in his case, that time, was advising me very crudely, or rather directly. You need to find out those who are in the system who are against the interest of the majority. You are doing the majority want it, but a few who are going to lose because of the decision will try and work on it so that you don't succeed. Be aware that those you are working for may not even be aware that you are bringing this good thing for them. But those who are going to lose because of the bringing that policy will be quick to it and amass and be ready to counter you. So you have to be always aware of who are likely to suffer from the policy and who are likely to benefit.
as well.
So that is not altogether a neutral
Position.
process.
Okay.
No, and you need, as a public servant, to be aware. Sometimes it is necessary for you to declare your own position. You have to declare that, Mr. Minister, my personal view is this. You know, but in terms of your work, I would suggest this and that and that and that.
Okay.
So that it is fair. You know, if you must, sometimes you feel so strongly about it, you can say, Mr. Minister, may I ask the director to advise you on this, because my own experience from childhood, has suffered from this.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to put myself in, because if you don't inform the minister of the biases in the assumptions leading to the understanding of the problems and the solutions, then you have not been fair. So many civil servants, because they went through a lot of tumult through our history, with the changes of government and some military, some the civilians did not spare them also. For instance, you may know about Apollo 568, where Professor Busia sacked some civil servants. Some of them went to court. They won, and then Busia said, no court can change this. No, we have gone through all of that. So they will be wary about very, very political situations. But if you are doing your work well, like I've just suggested, do your proper analysis, show where the public interest is, where people against it might want to be, so that the minister can take the decision aware of the pitfalls in the process of the decision making.
So we would like to take your final peace message, as we have the incoming elections as well.
We have now a large number of presidential aspirants. Is it 31? 30.
Yes.
All of them who want to assume leadership of the country. So you can see that there are a range of ideas. Eventually, only one person will be selected. The one advice I would want to give is that all of us, knowing this, that not all the 30 can become president. Only one will become president. So there will be so many who would feel like they are losers, that they're lost. Even if when it comes down to two, and one party loses, that there's a huge number of people who are not with the winning party. So the leadership is more what the leadership are saying. That I would say, listen to the one who is saying that he will be a leader for all. That's what President Mills used to say. You're father of all. You come with suggestions that this person is not from our party, and so he said, look, is he a Ghanaian? Is he well qualified? And has he a family? And go away. So we have example of people who knew that we all one people, and we are one nation, and we must stand as such. So voters, I am imploring you, listen carefully to what your leaders are saying, and select the one who would, which must do it peacefully. It's not a struggle. It's a matter of choosing one. So you make your choice. If you like, before the election day, make all your campaign to get your one person elected, and then after that, the leaders who win must be magnanimous. This winner take all thing, we'll have to address it one day, because it's the problem. for the 8th lecture, I would like us to report that the advice of one of the legacy advices, that it is the perfection of the civil service that moves a country, not the politician. You must research it, and I have also given an idea that it's to do with take the civil service law. But some time ago they were trying to make it into an act, and they tried several times to dismantle what the original Civil Service Act, introducing the chief director and the 4-line divisions and all that. They tried to dismantle and did not succeed. So we know that it has stood the test of time. Let us help both top politicians and top public servants to work with it. It is a very, very potent tool. All senior top senior civil servants must know what it contains and what it does, and then we should try and get GIMPA to reposition itself, and government to also remember that there were times when, on winning elections, they went for orientation, to be briefed about what the civil service resources are and what they can deploy. I suppose it's my pleasure to thank you for steering such an interesting interview.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. We are so grateful to have had you here with us. Thank you for your time and inviting us here with you. And we would also like to say a big thank you to you all for watching. This is the end of the exclusive interview with Ambassador Benjamin Clement Egan. You can catch us on GoTV channel 184. We're streaming live on Facebook and YouTube, so you can send in your comments and suggestions as well. We will see you bright and early on Thursday morning. Do have an amazing day.
Clog TV. Beyond the policy.